not just that Elon Musk is a huckster and Starship isn't going to make us multiplanetary. Space is hard. Space is crazy expensive. Putting humans on rockets multiplies the difficulty and the expense. That means if you want to attract the money that it takes to send humans somewhere in space, you've got to be a master of hype. On the other hand, we have what almost amounts to an obligation to explore the solar system. If the Earth were just a little more massive, there'd be no way to get off the Earth. It's a stroke of luck we can send rockets to other planets, to moons, to asteroids, and so on. Two spacecraft, Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, have left the solar system and are now in interstellar space. But is it a good idea to send humans far into space? Currently, a human presence is maintained in Earth orbit on the International Space Station, and other space stations are being planned. The last time humans went beyond Earth orbit was the Apollo program to send humans to the moon and return them to Earth. Apollo just barely accomplished this feat. It was repeated 6 times at great peril to the astronauts involved. 3 died in a test of their Apollo space capsule on the ground. 3 others almost perished in space when their rocket partly exploded on the way to the moon, and several other incidents could readily have been fatal. What differentiates current plans being made to return humans to the moon is that it must be done with the same kind of a routine, relative safety that applies to sending humans to Earth orbit. In other words, it's got to be repeatable hundreds of times without killing astronauts. There are probably advances in science and technology that will create earthly benefits and economic value from that effort, but it's going to be very, very expensive compared with sending robots to explore the solar system. While it is possible, to spend months in space without permanent disability, that fact comes with some qualifications. Astronauts on ISS must exercise 2 hours per day to avoid muscle and bone atrophy that would make it impossible for them to function on return to Earth. A trip to Mars and back would take about the same time as the longest duration anyone has spent on a space station. In other words, human performance for travel to Mars would have to routinely match the longest duration yet tried. Why aren't these difficulties and limitations more prominent in the discussion of space travel? You can blame Cold War technology competition for a lot of that. Nations were willing to spend and risk astronaut lives to achieve astonishing goals. These goals were portrayed as a stepping stone to even more fantastical objectives. In other words, you don't sell a program like Apollo by saying it's going to be insanely risky. It will consume 5% of GDP, and we'll be lucky if we don't kill a number of astronauts in the attempt. And that is at the outer limits of what mankind can accomplish. A lot of our current human spaceflight ambitions are an echo of Cold War posturing for the prestige of manned spaceflight. If we don't get back to the moon, maybe the Chinese will beat us there. And that's all about how nations on Earth will compare the US and China. When you hear rhetoric like making mankind multiplanetary is a survival measure against the possible destruction of Earth, keep in mind what it would take to make, for example, a Mars colony or even a lunar base self-sufficient for food, water, and air. For a long time into the future, humans will have to bring everything they plan to eat, drink, and breathe with them. If we want to change that fact, we'll have to bring all of the capital equipment, including maintenance materials and spare parts, needed with us from Earth. That's not really making us multiplanetary. Space hype is harmful in at least 2 ways. First, it obviously makes people susceptible to space hucksters selling improbable projects. Secondly, it obscures the actual achievements, like sending a helicopter that flies around on Mars. Scientific and engineering accomplishments of the future can potentially change our ability to live and work in space, but we live in an age when our robots are far better at space travel than we are, and they can accomplish much more for the advancement of our knowledge than we can by being there in person. Don't let space hype distract you from that fact.